Check me out. Yeah.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Mile High Mentors podcast. My name is Connor Doobie and thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Whatever platform you're listening on, SoundCloud, Spreaker, YouTube, please give us your feedback and your comments. And what do you like about the show? What do you dislike about the show? Please tell us so we can continue to improve this. Guys, what is Mile High Mentors? We are here. We are the number one platform to bring you valuable insights, information, and we also want to connect you with all the top influencers, mentors, leaders, entrepreneurs in the awesome state of Colorado. We have an incredible ecosystem here. So, again, guys, going back to social media, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and we're always posting behind-the-scenes content there that you can check out, some insights on the show and what's going on. Today's sponsor is Active Blogs. Be sure to check them out at activeblogs.com. They are the go-to for all things B2B marketing. activeblogs.com for a no-cost expert consultation. Today's guest, the very first politician we've had on Mile High Mentors, and it was for sure very, very interesting. Nikki Yolich is running for Colorado House Representative. His family has really interesting ties to the political scene down in Texas, even up down with the Bush family, and his upcoming and some of his political stances were very fascinating as well, and I think it would benefit you guys. Definitely tune in. This is going on within our own ecosystem here. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Nikki Yolich to the Mile High Mentors podcast.
Honestly, since I was a little kid.
Have you had a day job? Like a normal day job?
Not. I worked at a tapas. Let me make that clear. Tapas, not topless. Because every time I say this, people are like, you worked at a tapas restaurant?
Two slightly different
I worked at a tapas restaurant for a few days when I was a kid, but they weren't paying us, so we threatened to sue them.
Wow.
And then they paid me, and then
Where
I
was
could keep
this
working there. This was down. I grew up in a little town called the Woodlands, Texas.
Yeah.
Which is extremely very religious, very right bent little town just north of Houston.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty much my first job, actually, when I was a junior, I think, in high school. It was this little, called me Luna, tapas bar.
Tapas.
Right.
It was a topless tapas bar.
That would have been nice.
Right.
But no, unfortunately, just a normal tapas. It was actually a pretty good restaurant. I don't think it's there anymore, though. I think they got shut down, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't very well run. Like, the food was pretty good, but it was... The people who were running it weren't very nice.
Have you been to Spain, like had actual...
No, I've never been to mainland Europe, honestly. I'd really love to. I've been to just the UK.
Yeah.
It's the only part of Europe I've been to.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a tapas restaurant down here called Ninth Door. Mm-hmm. And have you been there before? It's like right on Blake Street.
Blake, is that downtown?
Yeah, downtown. Highly recommend it.
You know what? I know what you're talking about. I haven't been there.
The Ninth Door. Yeah. Oh, dude, it's so good. Yeah.
Cool. I'll check it.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, and well, first off, kick things off, really appreciate you coming on the show, and we're live and all this good stuff, so super excited to have you here.
Well, thank you, Connor. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you, man. First question. All right. Given our current times, how does it feel to be running for president?
It's exciting. Honestly, I think it's really a great time for people to be jumping into politics.
Why is that?
I think it's... Look, I'm a Democrat. I worked very hard for Hillary last year. I'm not a fan of the person who's currently in office. If there's one thing that Donald Trump did do that's positive, it's he proved that really anybody can run for office. Anybody can be successful if you just put yourself out there. I mean, one thing he has going for him is he isn't beholden to anyone. Well, ostensibly he isn't beholden to anyone. I would argue otherwise. But it really showed people that, you know, if you I mean, he doesn't even have a clean background, but really, I mean, if you're the slightest bit respectable, you can put yourself out there if you want to offer up good ideas. And
it really shows the system, like, really is in place. The actual political system is somewhat still in place.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, and I think that it shows that there really is sort of a long-term plan for the system. When you look at the second that Trump got elected, like, everyone that I knew was terrified, frankly.
Right.
Because most people I'd been working with were minorities. I was running the canvassing program for the Colorado Latino Rise coordinated campaign. And
what does that entail?
So basically, we had it was just about the last 8 weeks of the election last year, last couple months. We hired about 250 canvassers. I had 4 deputies working for me. We knocked about 80,000 doors around the Denver metro area in about 8 weeks. Yeah, it was a great program. Honestly, it was the most hardworking canvassing effort I've ever been a part of. It was really exciting.
Yeah.
And we had some success. I mean, Hillary won Colorado pretty handily.
We've probably pissed off some of the same homeowners before.
I'm sure we have, yeah. But anyway, that experience, just working with that program, I mean, that's really what made me want to run. But it also definitely gave me a lot of perspective as far as how the other communities, how these other minority communities, ethnic communities, really experience politics and how much it truly affects them, too. A lot of people... All the time, I feel like the most common reason you get for people not voting is it doesn't affect me. It doesn't matter to my life. Whatever decisions they make up there.
Yeah.
But we're starting to realize that that's really not true. Those decisions impact us pretty heavily. And you look at what's going on with healthcare right now is a great example. There's a lot of Coloradans I've talked to in the last few months who are terrified. They're dependent on these Medicaid subsidies, and they might not have them in a year or two.
And a lot of that Latino and Latina community was terrified when Trump was elected, and so, like, has that shifted, do you feel like, since, we're now a year into the presidency?
Yeah, so I think that it started off with people seemed very depressed and deflated and down in the dumps, quite frankly. I mean, people genuinely feared for their country. I think people still do, quite frankly. I mean, even Republicans, a lot of them are terrified of him. But I think that we've finally gotten to the point now where people have kind of gotten over that initial shock of what happened. And now I think they're really responding to it much more constructively, much more positively. And I think that's why we're seeing, I mean, you look at the females running in the last election that we had just a few days ago, we're running in record numbers all across the country because they felt empowered by, having this type of person in the White House who's said and done the things that he's done. I think of the Billy Bush interview that was so famous. I mean, that really drove people to want to resist that, to want to show that this is not representative of America. We are representative of America, not racism and sexual harassment and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. This is going to be a really interesting conversation. You're the very first politician we've had on Mile High Mentors, so this is super cool. Well, but let's I want to get into that stuff, but let's go back a little bit because I want to hear a little bit about kind of your upbringing and what influenced you into politics. And so, you've been doing it for years and years. I even went to school for this stuff. So first off, where'd you grow up? Where were you born, and what was your childhood like?
So I grew up I was born in Houston, Texas. The first several years of my life, actually, we were just moving around a lot because my dad went to law school at SMU the first few years of my life. So we went up to Dallas. Obviously, this was when I was a toddler, so I have no memory of it. But then we went back down to Houston. I started going to a tiny private school up in the Woodlands, which is why we moved to the Woodlands, about 27 miles north of Houston. And honestly, my childhood was fairly uneventful, I would say, at least until I turned 17 and got leukemia. But up until that point, it was fairly uneventful, honestly. My parents, I'm very fortunate to have 2 parents who are generally loving, caring people. They've been together from the time that they got married about a year before I was born. So they've been together for about 33 years now.
Wow. Do you have are they politicians? What are your parents doing?
That's an interesting aspect of this. So my dad is a politician. He actually works for the other party. My dad's a very active Republican in Southeast Texas. And he's got all sorts of great stories from it, too. I mean, he's
still is
so far...
actively?
Yeah, he's still active down there. I mean, he was so far to the right that back when George W. Bush was the governor of Texas, my dad was always fighting with Bush and all that group as far as taxes. Like, my dad is super conservative when it comes to taxes. So apparently there was one day when Karl Rove called my dad up on the phone and was just screaming profanity at him for 5 minutes.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff my dad gets into. But it's funny because in spite of how great my parents are and the fact that they're still together, while my dad is a super active Republican, my mom is a novelist of LGBT romance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She's
Really?
had, I think, 4 or 5 now. And they're all period pieces. They're all like 1920s New York City sort of period piece style, gay romance novels, and they're all always men too.
That's really interesting.
But she loves it. She's done a great job with it. And my dad,
quite the opposite. Opposites.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But my dad's very supportive of it, so I appreciate that.
So, do you feel that helps you be like super well balanced on both ends of the spectrum?
Yeah,
then?
I definitely think so. I mean, I grew up, in Montgomery County, Texas, where the Woodlands is. It's sort of like Boulder, Colorado. Like, running as a Republican in Boulder is just as much of a waste of time as running as a Democrat in Montgomery County, Texas, honestly. People just don't do it. If you register as a Democrat, you're going to have nobody to vote for.
Right.
So growing up, I mean, I followed my dad to all these different Republican events. My dad was the president of this little club called the Pachyderm Club, which, the elephant's the symbol of the Republican Party, which is why they call it that. And my dad...
With pachyderm.
Elephant's a name for a pachyderm, or pachyderm's a word for elephant.
No, I had no idea. Pachyderm is another term for an elephant. Oh, all right. Learn something new every day.
I wouldn't have known if it wasn't for the club.
Okay.
So he ran that group for a while.
Yeah.
He actually... That group became the Republican Leadership Council, and then it's actually kind of a funny story. After he left that group, they went way, way, way far to the religious right, and there's a shopping center right across the street from the Woodlands called the Portofino Shopping Center that has all these big fake, like Italian art statues, and there was a statue of David on top of the Oshman's, or I guess it's Sports Authority now, maybe, whatever, the sporting goods store, and the RLC actually forced them to put a fig leaf over David's genitals because it was obscene to have that out in public.
Yeah.
So that was my dad's group. That's kind of representative of his politics. But I'm pretty much an exact opposite.
Have you met Bush and like some of the other major politicians?
I've met a few people. I mean, I met Nancy Pelosi when I was working on a campaign a few years ago. Yeah. I met George H.W. Bush and Ban Ki-moon, who used to be the UN Secretary General. Mm-hmm. I met them when I was applying to graduate school, and I applied to the at Texas A&M's Public Policy School, which is named for George H.W. Bush.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so he's very active down there, and they just happened to both be there at the orientation, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly, Colorado-based politicians are most of the ones that I'm more familiar with. Yeah. I'll get to the big wigs eventually.
Yeah,
the bigger
absolutely.
wigs.
That's the plan, right? Ultimately?
Well, I want to take it one step at a time. I mean, yes, I'm ambitious, and I'd like to see how far I can take this, but I really love Colorado. I moved here. Well, I wish I could say I was a native, but I'm also kind of proud of the fact that I've been to 44 states, I believe, and about a dozen different countries, and Denver truly is my top choice of city of anywhere I've been to that I'd want to live. I really want to start off working for the people of Denver and the people of Colorado, and then after I've been able to do 8 years of that, and I'm term limited from running again, then we'll talk about the next step from there. But I'm focused on Denver right now.
Gotcha. So again, going back, like your dad was a major political to go into politics, and who else, like throughout your time in college, like who are some mentors of yours that really got you, got that fire lit and everything?
So I think throughout college, a lot of the people that inspired me were people that I didn't necessarily meet.
Yeah.
People like James Carville, who you're probably familiar with. He ran Bill Clinton's campaign back in 1992. And I don't know if you are familiar with him, but he's an incredibly colorful. He's a true character. Like, he's the Ragin' Cajun is his nickname, and he talks with a heavy Cajun accent. And there's actually a city in Louisiana on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans that's called Carville, Louisiana, named after, I think, his great-grandfather. But, I mean, he's just such a character. He's such a great guy. He's truly one of my political heroes. And what really kills me, I went to Tulane for undergrad, and the semester after I graduated, James Carville started teaching political science at Tulane. I came so close.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so you graduated in which year?
In 2008.
Okay, this was in New Orleans, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. And then how soon after that you came out here?
So I was here about 2 months later, actually, because I finished up college doing a couple summer school classes, and then just jumped right into graduate school up at the University of Denver right after that. Okay. And what did you do when you first got out here? Like, what were some of your first ambitions? Because this is your first time actually running, right? Yeah, that's correct. Well, so when I first got out here, I was really just completely focused on graduate. It's hard for me to not look at the microphone. It's so fancy.
I know. It's like shiny object syndrome.
Sorry, these were not supposed to break. But,
oh, that was good. That was good.
Let's see. The question was, wait, so what did I do?
Maybe we need to get a pop cover for this thing so we don't have like...
That's a bling.
Yeah. I didn't realize we had so much blingage going on here. Diamond encrusted.
It's so beautiful. I know. I feel like I should be like wearing it on my finger. Or
These are great too. Like, and you guys too. Running your campaign, something that would be really interesting is like doing some sort of podcast or audio content's really big. Like, these aren't massively expensive, and having a space and talking about as like I said, if I was running for politics, the more I could talk about my stuff, I would be doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and as much as you can put media on your website and on YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a lot more entertaining and interesting to people than sitting there reading, 10 pages of dense policy. I mean, even politicians don't like doing that. You know? You always hear about these bills that go through Congress that are hundreds of pages long, and then you ask the congressman who voted on the bill, he voted for the bill, and you ask him, so what was on page 12? He says, I have no idea. I didn't read it. Did you see how long that thing is?
Oh, boy. It's probably a whole nother can of worms right there, huh?
But anyway, I should go back to your original question.
Yes.
So when I first moved out here, it was just for graduate school. That was my focus for the first couple of years. It was the Joseph Corbell School.
Stop looking at it. Stop looking at the
Corbell
microphone.
School of International...
Just laser.
The Joseph Corbell School of International Studies, which is really, it's a world-renowned international affairs school. I feel very fortunate that I actually got in there. DU, University of Denver, is just a beautiful campus.
Yeah.
A really great group of people that go there. Great group of professors.
Is DU a major political school as far as like getting some sort of degree in politics?
I mean, as far as international affairs, it is. I really don't know a whole lot about the undergraduate program. I know it's a pretty solid program, but I've only interacted with them a little bit.
Yeah.
Mostly through most of my experience as far as the undergraduate program at DU is recruiting interns. I found that the University of Denver students, the University of Denver and the area students really seem to be the most socially aware, the most socially active and driven and interested in actually taking part in this kind of stuff. Do
you have to go to college to be a politician?
No, you definitely don't have to, honestly. I mean, I think it's like any sort of position in life where going to college surely helps. It definitely gives you a leg up. It causes people, having a college degree definitely earns you a certain amount of respect. Having said that, there's a lot of just naturally awesome people out there that don't need college and are able to be incredibly successful without them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm not advocating for not going to college.
Well, I just didn't know because a lot of folks we talk to are entrepreneurs and business leaders and stuff like that, and most of them would say, no, you don't need a college degree to do what we're doing or whatever. But I just didn't know on the political side of things, do most politicians graduate college? And
I mean, typically,
are the majority of them college graduates?
I don't know what the percentages are.
Yeah.
Typically, I would guess the majority actually are law school graduates, not just college graduates.
That makes sense too.
That tends to be what happens because, I mean, it's probably just... it's all about law. So much of politics is about shaping law, creating law.
Yeah.
But then also you learn so many skills in law school. Like you learn debate, which is so important. You just learn to be able to think quickly. You learn to be able to interact with a wide variety of people. And those are all skills that are passed on in politics.
Yeah. And as far as going into politics, do you feel like a lot of what you're trying to initiate and engage with now was still stuff that you were interested in back, like even in college when you knew you wanted to be in politics? Have a lot of the same, I guess, not concepts or what's the word I'm looking for? Like
sort of the overriding themes. I guess,
like
same?
Your reason, your why behind doing what you do.
Yeah.
Has it been pretty much the same, or has it really shifted dynamically?
Well, I will say there's one concept, and I think I might have mentioned to you actually in past times we've interacted, but there's one concept that's really been defining of my political life for really as long as I can remember, and it's the line that you've probably heard this before, that in a democracy, people generally get the kind of government that they deserve. Which basically means you get what you put into it. If you're apathetic about your country, if you don't vote, if you're not active, then you're going to get bad politicians who are just going to be out there for themselves, who are just going to milk the system, game the system, and just keep taking money out of your pocket so that they can put it in their pocket. But if people are active, if people are interested and engaged, and they express their opinion, then I think you get good leaders. And I think we can see that sort of with the George W. Bush, then Obama, then Trump. We had a wave of apathy after Bill Clinton that led us to George W. Bush. Then people got so excited about the possibility of our first African-American president, which, if you ask me, I think it turned out spectacularly. I wish we could have had a third and a fourth term of Barack Obama, quite frankly. But people got really excited, so people got really active. People got out to vote, and so we managed to have 8 years of a really good president.
Right.
And then, unfortunately, people just weren't as excited about the people running. I think Hillary really was a great candidate, but there was so much perception created around her that really was just false. I mean, for decades, they'd been going after her ever since she was First Lady. And so I think just that lack of excitement caused people to slide back into apathy, slide back into becoming more and more withdrawn into themselves and scared and not really wanting to get out of the political system. And so I think that's why we ended up having Donald Trump, frankly. I mean, Donald Trump is such a protectionist president. He's very much identified as, it's all about make America great again, America first, just pulling away from the international system, which I think is the exact wrong way to go. I mean, I'm all about getting people involved, getting people active. That's why I'm a field guy. All the campaigns that I've ever worked on.
What do you mean field guy?
Right. So field, basically, there's several different departments in any campaign. The two main ones really are finance and field. And a lot of people joke that finance raises the money and field spends it. And basically, field is all about knocking on doors, making phone calls, going, taking 10 volunteers out to a major intersection and waving signs, getting people to honk and all that good stuff. It's the face-to-face wing of the campaign, really.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're saying a lot of other peers or politicians aren't the field guys.
Yeah, well, I don't think that most politicians actually start off working on campaigns most of the time. I think most politicians tend to come from the private sector or from, just sort of from their own sort of separate thing. I don't know. I mean, I think more and more you're probably seeing people like me who start off working through campaigns, but it's pretty rare to see people jump from one to the other. There's a very different mentality from working on a campaign to being a candidate. Because the staffer mentality is far more ferocious, is what I would say. It's all about win at all costs, quite frankly. Is the way that they look at it.
Like an episode of House of Cards.
Yeah, pretty much.
You watch House of Cards?
I actually really liked House of Cards, although I'm disappointed by...
Do you think that's legit? Do you think
now.
that finicky stuff actually does go on in politics?
I think that
in the way that they portray
House of Cards is more... The only thing about House of Cards that is unrealistic to me is that he could have planned everything out so far ahead and known exactly how everything was going to break.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the point-by-point things that happen, I think are actually more realistic than people would guess. Now, having said that, I would honestly... I don't know, do you watch Veep? With Julia Louis-Dreyfus on HBO?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, that show is more accurate in terms of the way that the staffers interact with each other. Because it really is very fratty, the way that people interact with each other on campaigns, and also in D.C. and the congressional offices and stuff like that. I mean, it's all, cursing and people drinking and debauchery, and people on campaigns have a lot of fun with each other, sometimes too much fun.
Really?
But of course, I mean, as a candidate, you really can't behave that way. I mean, partly out of respect to the office, out of respect to the people. Like, it's definitely been a major change for me personally, going from being a staffer behind the scenes to actually being a candidate. Because you want to be representative of the right kind of politician. There's so much mistrust in politicians nowadays, and I completely understand it. It's as much as I believe that people shouldn't be apathetic, I believe that the apathy has kind of led us to a point where we've come to mistrust our politicians because we've let them get away with so much, and so now they're all corrupt, and so we don't trust them. I mean, they're not all corrupt, but there's a lot of corruption going on, and so there's a lot of mistrust. But
do you think there is in Colorado, too, on the political side?
Yeah,
corruption?
Well, I mean, look at what just happened in the last couple of days. I don't know if you might have seen this, but I think it was actually just yesterday, a big scandal broke out in the Democratic Party.
Really?
Steve Lubsock, who's currently, he's a state representative who's running for state treasurer. He was just basically outed by several people now as a serial sexual harasser, apparently, unfortunately. I don't know that there's truth to it, honestly, but the people that have come out, Faith Winter was the first person who came out and said that she's another representative in the state house. Okay. And they're both Democrats, and she was saying that apparently there was one night when they were at a bar, I guess, for some kind of event, and he was trying to drag her out. Well, that sounds a little harsh. I mean, he was from the way she described, like he was grabbing her by the elbow and trying to get her to come out to the bar. And apparently, he was quite angry.
Yeah.
It's become, and then 8 other legislators and staffers and people involved in politics have come out since then saying similar things about him, which is really unfortunate. I mean, have you met the guy? I have, actually. That's what I was going to say. It smacks you in the face sometimes when you find out the types of people that actually do this kind of stuff. You would really never expect it until it comes out. I've only met Steve, I think, once or twice back on my first campaign in 2012 when I was working for Joe McCloskey in the 6th Congressional District. Steve Lopsaw came and volunteered for us a couple times. Toward the very end of the campaign. Those are the only times I met him. But yeah, he seemed like a very decent guy then. But I guess he's made some mistakes, unfortunately.
That's really interesting. So is there, in your opinion, for other people that may be listening to this and have an interest in politics, is there a lack of politicians in Colorado and people that are really heavily involved in politics, or do you think it's an oversaturated market?
I definitely don't think it's oversaturated. I mean, we have a lot of people running this year. I'm a Big Ten person. I would encourage as many people as want to run should run for politics. Because first of all, it's really not as scary as you think. I mean, especially because a lot of people, when you do kinds of things like this, these kinds of events, or when you go and talk to people at events, the people that you're talking to are aware of the fact that what you're doing is kind of a scary thing. It's something that you're probably not used to. And so people tend to be really nice to you. Yeah. People tend to be pretty open-minded. So it's really not that scary. The race that I'm currently in, there's already 5 people running, and we've still got 8 months until the primary. Even
District 5, right?
Right. Yep. House District 5, right in the middle of Central Denver, downtown, and the areas north and south of downtown.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, as many people as want to run, I would love it if 15, 20 people want to run for this seat, and every other seat they should.
How many Democrats, how many Republicans for District 5 are running against you?
So currently there's 4 other Democrats, 5 total Democrats. Yeah. I'm not aware. Last time I checked Colorado Tracer, which is the database where the Secretary of State keeps track of this stuff, there were no registered Republicans running.
Interesting.
I would imagine there probably will be at least one that runs in the general election. But, the district is just so overwhelmingly Democratic. Whoever wins the Democratic primary is pretty much a lock. Yeah. Crisanta Duran, who's been the representative for the district the last 4 terms. Yeah. The last 3 terms when she was just running for re-election, the same guy ran against her, the same Republican, and she won 75 to 25% every time. Wow. So, it was a total blowout.
Wow, interesting. How many years have we had a Democrat in the District 5 position? Has it been years and years?
I'm not really sure. I mean, honestly, first of all, I mean the districts change every 10 years. They're redrawn. So as long as this group of people, like this geographic area, I'm sure has had Democrats represented since the modern Democratic Party, probably since the 60s. Because it's so solidly Democratic. Yeah. But who knows? I mean, with redistricting 10 years ago, this could have been the 20th district. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, and we kind of breezed right past it, but you mentioned leukemia. You ran in with leukemia in your late teen years. Was that right?
When I was 17.
Yeah, okay. What happened there? How'd you... You overcame that.
Unfortunately, yes.
You're no longer you're cancer free.
I'm in remission. I do still take medication. Okay. So I'll tell you the whole story because it's actually a pretty interesting story. Yeah. So I think it was before I actually turned 17 in the fall of, I guess that would be 2002. Just out of nowhere, I would be getting these giant, on my upper arms and on my stomach, just these literally hand-sized bruises. And I would have no idea where they came from. Yeah. Just totally inexplicable. And then I would get these really hard, painful lumps, in my back and in my armpits. Jeez. And I had no idea what was going on. So we went to see, I was a 17-year-old still going to a pediatrician. But anyway, so we went to
What's that movie? Oh man, what's that movie? I can't even think of it. Anyways, go ahead. I'm not gonna derail this.
Okay.
You just brought a really funny image to my head.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting there with 5-year-olds playing with blocks and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you're fighting with them because they took the train games.
But anyway, so I went to see the pediatrician, and I actually asked him, because I was a kid, and I was kind of a hypochondriac even as a kid. Yeah. So I asked him point blank, like, could this be something cancer-related? And he was like, no, it's just a cyst. Just let it drain on its own, and it'll be fine. And
like
so
these lumps you had?
Yeah, right. He thought that they were just, it was just cysts. So he didn't do a blood test. If he'd done a blood test, he would have caught it.
Wow.
So about 3 or 4 months after that, I was sitting in math class, and I started having this horrible, horrible pain in my left side. Like, I'm doubled over at my desk in pain. And I thought it was just a cramp, so I'm just like, my friend's sitting right next to me, like, go to the nurse. What is wrong with you? And I'm like, no, don't worry, it'll pass. It's just cramps.
Yeah.
So after about 5 or 10 minutes of that, finally he yells to the teacher, get him out of here. He needs to go to the nurse. So I go to the nurse. They think that they thought I had a collapsed lung for some reason. Because I guess if you have a collapsed lung, sometimes you can experience like lower abdominal pain. So they sent me to Memorial Hermann, which is the main hospital in the Woodlands. And keep in mind, the Woodlands had like 80,000 people in it at the time, so we didn't have a whole lot of medical centers.
Yeah.
And so when I first got there, they did a CT scan, they did a blood test, and then that was pretty much all they needed. My spleen, which is supposed to be the size of a baseball, was the size of a football. And normally you're supposed to have between 5,000 and 10,000 white blood cells. When they first took my blood that day, I had about 200,000. And that was really all they needed to be able to be like, yep, you have leukemia. We're not sure what kind. They thought I had acute leukemia, actually, at first.
What's the difference?
There's a huge difference. They were giving me all these sorts of horror stories. So basically, I mean, there's several different kinds of leukemia, so I don't want to oversimplify it, and I don't really know a whole lot about all the other kinds besides the one I have. Generally, acute leukemia is far more serious than chronic leukemia, just because it's a lot more aggressive for the most part. And also there's far less cures for it. I actually ended up getting really lucky because, so they thought that I had acute leukemia. They were saying, you're going to be in the hospital at least a month. There's a good chance you're not even going to make it. All this sort of terrifying stuff. Then the next day, I was transferred from Memorial Hermann to MD Anderson. And MD Anderson is generally ranked either the first or second best cancer center in the world. So I was incredibly lucky to get down there. And they did a few tests down there, and they were able to tell me, okay, you don't have acute leukemia. You have chronic myeloid leukemia. Now, that's kind of an interesting thing, first of all, because the vast majority of people that get CML are 65 years and older. And I was 17.
Yeah.
I was in the...
And how do you get it? Like, how... It's just
they have no
random.
idea. Yep, it's completely random. It's not.
Yeah.
It's genetic and it's not genetic in the sense that it's not genetic as far as being passed down.
Yeah.
But over the course of normal cell reproduction, mitosis, basically there's an enzyme called tyrosine kinase, which everybody has these.
Yeah.
But in people with CML, they overwork to create. Well, basically they create a chromosomal translocation called PCR-ABL. Now I'm getting probably overly scientific. Sorry, getting boring. But basically it creates this chromosomal translocation that causes your body to just way overproduce immature white blood cells. And that's what basically CML is. And the way that people generally die of it is through like a blood clot or something like that, because you have several times the number of blood cells you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got incredibly lucky because just a few years before I was diagnosed, they came out with a class of drugs called tyrosine kinase inhibitors, which do exactly what it sounds like. They basically get in there and block these enzymes from causing this mistake to occur. And even since I was diagnosed, there's got to be 7 or 8 of those kinds of drugs out there now. They're just becoming more powerful. And
you still take them to this day?
Yep, to this day I take it's called
12 years, 13 years later?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been, I guess it'll be 15 years in January.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, in a few years I'll be at the point where I'll have lived more of my life with leukemia than without.
So you technically still have leukemia then?
Yeah, technically I do. It is in remission, but...
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'll probably have to take the medication for the rest of my life. But again, I'm very lucky because it's very minimal side effects.
Yeah.
I have to keep an eye on my diet. I can't eat a bunch of junk food because then I don't want to have so much of a fun day. But but that's most people.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we'll have to talk about that later because I'm super health nut and stuff like that. And I've heard some really interesting things on leukemia and like ketogenic diet and stuff like that. I think we were even talking about that the other day. But anyways, what is that like? What impact did that have on your life today? What kind of role does that play for you?
I mean, I think it definitely gave me a much better appreciation of life, for sure. I think that any time at a young age, it was interesting. Getting leukemia at 17, I feel like was kind of the best and the worst time to get it, because you're old enough to understand what's happening to you on the physiological level, but you're still young enough that you're too immature to handle it as well as you might if you were, in your 30s, 40s, something like that.
Right.
So it was a terrifying experience, but I'll never forget, like, even the first day I was diagnosed, I was telling myself that if this doesn't kill me, it's probably going to be one of the best experiences of my life. And I genuinely believe that to this day. It gave me a much greater appreciation for existence, frankly. I'll never forget, there were a couple of times where I had to undergo a procedure called apheresis, which is basically where they stick a needle in one arm, stick a needle in the other arm, and they just filter all of your blood through a machine to get something out. In my case, it was white blood cells.
That's creepy.
But what was weird about it for me, that's not actually what was really bad. I had so many needles put in my arms that they were big welts, so they couldn't even do it the second time I had apheresis. They had to stick these big needles right in the top. That was really painful in my hands.
You're killing me, dude. You're killing me.
With your reactions, I had to tell that part of the story.
Oh, no. But people are listening to this right now in their car just going, ooh, just like that creepy needle thing.
But what I was going to say, though, on a more somber note, when I was doing these apheresis procedures, it's kind of funny. Throughout the entire process, people were saying to me all the time, like, I would look at you and I'd never know you had leukemia.
Yeah.
And that was totally true. But when I was doing apheresis, and there were probably 20 other people, it was this big room where everyone was undergoing the same procedure, because it took several hours.
Yeah.
And it was really just so terrifying and so sad seeing literally every other person in there looked far more seriously ill than I was. I mean, people with, massive portions of skin sloughing off of their bodies, because that's what some really harsh leukemias can do to you. I mean, people that looked like they were on the brink of death. I'm sure a lot of those people probably aren't around now.
Yeah.
And I think that experience, as terrifying as it was, again, just gave me a real appreciation.
Yeah. Is it a chemotherapy treatment with leukemia, or that's a different... You
do chemotherapy with leukemia. In my case, though, and I'm not exactly sure why. For some reason, the drugs that I take aren't considered chemotherapy. Yeah. I'm not really sure what the categorization is.
Yeah. Do you involve yourself now with any leukemia-related foundations, or
to some extent? My parents are actually incredibly involved with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Actually, I think at least some, if not almost all, I think, of the proceeds from my mom's books go to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
Wow.
And then my parents are always big sponsors for the Light the Night Walk whenever they do it in the Woodlands, which is one of the LLS's big fundraising events. And then my dad, actually, this is an interesting thing about my dad. So I think it was in 2010 or 2011, my mom was diagnosed with endometrial cancer. And she had to have a hysterectomy, but she's okay now. But it really freaked my dad out, my dad was about 410 pounds at the time. And with just the experience of his wife going through that, my dad suddenly decided to get really fit. So over about 15 months, he lost about 220 pounds. Wow. But that's not even the most impressive part. He started doing all these Ironman competitions. He climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. He climbed Mount Rainier.
That's crazy.
He climbed Mount Elbrus, which is the highest, which is in Russia. It's the highest point of Europe. But then as part of that, relating more to what we were just talking about, he was doing like all these Susan G. Komen, like 5K runs and all sorts of stuff like that. And he, I think he was the biggest fundraiser, actually, for the Susan G. Komen's Aspen fundraiser, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
So they're very active with that stuff.
That's great. So do you do that stuff too, the Ironman? And
come on.
So he's 200 pounds and he's doing all that stuff, though? Or he's just stocked? He's like a beefy dude now.
Kind of. Well, he's gained a lot of weight back, honestly, in the last couple of years. But he was just working his butt off. He was eating incredible. I mean, he would eat nothing but nuts and cheese and crackers, and he would probably spend 4 or 5 hours a day just running and biking and swimming, and he was incredibly committed. And this is all when he was over 50, too.
Yeah, that's crazy, especially over 50 to do something like that.
Yeah. He's a very, very motivated human being.
Yeah,
I may disagree with him on almost everything, but he's a pretty interesting fellow.
I'm sure he probably has some really interesting stories to tell, especially on the political side of things. And so speaking of which, back to that, what are the major efforts that your campaign is going to be driving for? What are the top 2 or 3 initiatives that you're really working on?
Sure. So the 3 things that I was focused on from the beginning, making sure we continue to have access to universal health care, protecting and empowering minorities and immigrants, which with Donald Trump as president, I think is especially important. Excuse me. And then also renewable energy is the other thing I'm making a big push on. About a month or 2 ago, I made a pledge to pursue the goal that 100% of electricity in Colorado will be generated renewably by January 2027. The reason I picked that date was that would be the end of the 4th term for whoever is elected in this election, should they choose to serve 4 full terms. And then also as part of that, I've been putting together plans for something that I've been calling Solar State Colorado, which is basically the concept for a 5 to 10 square mile solar farm in the San Luis Valley, where we get over 320 days of sunshine a year. And it's also one of the most underdeveloped low-income areas in the state of Colorado. So we can get a bunch of jobs in there, both construction and then working the facility.
So putting just massive like solar panel farm out there, would that fuel electricity in the Denver area, in the downtown Denver area?
So we're still working out exactly how that would work. Probably most of the electricity would go
to be like wires that go
right, because the grid has to be hooked up to all of that. And it is fairly well hooked up at this point, but there is cost in getting that energy transported. But then also another major feature of the park of Solar State, there's actually 3 things. We want to have facilities for research in renewable energy, a job retraining center for people who are coming from non-green collar jobs into green collar jobs. And then also I want to have a state park feature to it with a museum and a visitor center so people can come from around the world and just learn about renewable energy, tour the farm. And then I also want to take the money from the state park aspect of the park and put that toward the roads in Colorado, because over the next 10 years, we're $9 billion short of all the road projects that we need to do.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I mean, I think anybody, if you drive around Colorado or the metro area, you can tell the roads are not in great shape right now. I think over the last 10 years, we've gone from a B rating to a C- rating, if I remember correctly. And we've known
every state has their own...
I know. I don't remember what the name is. I think there's some kind of federal agency that rates the quality of the roads for each state. And we've known for a decade now that this problem was on the horizon. But frankly, we've had a lot of issues. I think Tabor, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, has been a big problem because we can't raise taxes in Colorado. The state government can't raise taxes without voter approval. And so that's why the gas and diesel taxes in Colorado, they haven't been raised in years. We have around the 5th cheapest, I think, gas and diesel taxes in the country. And that's part of why our roads are such a mess right now, because we have no tax money. We don't have enough tax money going to the roads. And there's no... The state budget, there's no general funding in the state budget that goes to transportation, which is really strange.
Where are we at right now as far as renewable, like what percentage of Colorado is renewable energy at this point?
So that I know that as far as electricity, we're at about 1/6 of the way there. I honestly don't remember. It's been a while since I've looked at the charts where we are in the other areas. But I mean, coal is still powering most electricity, and coal and natural gas are still very, very significant. I mean, there's no denying the fact that fracking is really taken hold, especially in the northeastern part of Colorado. And it's a big part of the reason, frankly, that unemployment in Colorado is 2.5%, and we've had this economic boom.
Are you against the fracking, though?
I mean, like that's why I say, while we have to accept the economic benefits of it, over the long term, I think we need to be shifting from every sort of fossil fuel into renewable energy.
And solar's the way.
Well, I think right now we're actually looking at branching out into a bunch of different areas. I like solar, but we're looking at biomass. We're looking at wind as well. Actually, my campaign coordinator, who's Allison Wood, who's doing just a spectacular job for us, she's kind of taken the lead on looking into that policy area for us. So hopefully in the next few months we'll have a much more comprehensive plan as far as solar state and renewable energy. But it's a huge project, though.
I mean, 2027 is not that far away. No. 10 years.
And if you've ever done any research into renewable energy, one thing that we've found is that if you could look at 10 different articles online, and they'll give you 10 completely different pictures of like the cost of renewable energy, the revenue, the benefits. It's very hard to pin down exactly where we are at this point in time as far as the science behind renewable energy. But it is moving very quickly as well.
Well, like I said, I've heard so much weird, kooky stuff about the solar and how mining for minerals for solar panels is almost just as destructive as fracking and all the other activities.
And that's why we're looking into this other. I mean, that's why I'm sort of getting more and more into biomass because a lot of the idea behind
it's like the whack-a-mole. You don't
right.
know where you do this, what's going to pop up from that. So
yeah, but still, I mean, anytime that we can just reduce. Anytime, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Anytime that we can just reduce emissions as much as possible, it's going to be very, very hard for us to get completely to zero because even biomass, I mean, biomass has some emission, but it's a teeny tiny fraction compared to fossil fuels. And frankly, I'm a big believer. Like, I believe in climate change. I believe that climate change is driven at least to some extent by human activity. I think that there is some natural cycle to it as well.
Right.
But it's something that we need to be prepared for. The sea levels are rising. A vast majority of the people
whether it's cycles or not,
right. I mean, whether it's cycles or not, it's coming.
Right.
And we have, probably the majority of the people on the planet live in coastal cities.
Right.
That need to be preparing for this.
Right.
And so that's part of why. A few days ago, Initiative 300 passed in Colorado, which I was really excited about. It was the Green Roof Initiative, which basically the concept behind it was any major building, if they had at least 25,000 square feet of interior space, that any new project would need to have some form of solar energy or some kind of garden on the rooftop, covering a certain percentage of the roof.
Interesting. That's all in District 6? Or District 5,
right.
In downtown. In downtown. Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah. And I was really pushing for that, actually. I was trying to help them out.
Yeah, we were talking about that one.
And they were at some major disadvantages, too. It really was a David-Goliath kind of situation. The people that were fighting against the initiative had outraised the supporters by 12-1.
Yeah.
The mayor of the city, Michael Hancock, was against the initiative. A lot of prominent people were. But really, it was just good old-fashioned field grassroots effort. It's the kind of stuff that I've been doing for the last several years, so I love it when it works out.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't just pass. It passed, I think, around 54.5 to 45.5%. It passed by almost 10 points, which is a huge victory.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure going into the future, and having more green space on roofs and how the new buildings that are going up. A new building being built, I don't see any reason they couldn't be 100% renewable or sustainable.
Yeah, sure.
And so we're running short on time, but I do want to ask one last thing, and then we can tell people how they can get involved and get in contact with you. But you mentioned helping minorities and with the immigration policy. What are you going to do with that? What are your initiatives there to help minorities?
So as far as legislation, the most obvious thing that we can do is I'd like to see us pass sanctuary state legislation similar to what California just did in the past few months. Part of the problem with that issue is that there really is a pretty well-defined line that says that the federal government really has control of actually creating new immigration policy and enforcing it. However, sanctuary cities and sanctuary states are one thing that we can do. But to me, I want to apply, just like we were just talking about grassroots field techniques, I think that that's really where it's at. Actually just going into these communities, talking to people.
What does that mean? What is a sanctuary state?
So basically, these sort of sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, basically the idea behind it is to not force the state and municipal level law enforcement to interact with immigrations and customs enforcement, to basically be forced to, hold people who are being held for deportation, to hold them in county jail, stuff like that. It sort of just creates not a barrier, because I believe, if I remember correctly, it's illegal to actually create an intentional barrier, but it just sort of evaporates the communications, basically, between the organizations to make it a little bit more difficult to... I mean, I would say that it's done antagonistically, frankly, to antagonistically enforce some of the immigration laws that are just really harshly going after people who are just here to support their families, to contribute to society.
Now also, Obama's deported more Hispanics than Trump has so far in his presidency. So what's going to be the difference here? What's this going to help protect?
I mean, really? I think one thing, so part of it is Trump has been held back, quite frankly, I think, by the fact that he's not a very good proponent of his own ideas, because he's just... so harsh. He's so irrational, frankly, in the way that he tries to express ideas. He does it in this populist way that has made it very difficult for him to be effective. And so I think that's a big part of the reason that all of the crazy stuff that he was talking about in 2016 during the election, he's had a pretty hard time actually implementing that stuff. And I think that's very fortunate. I mean, as we get more of these laws on the books, and frankly, I think a lot of it is just racial understanding, too, is a big part of it, certainly in my eyes. Like, I'd like to see us do community fairs, things like that bring everyone together so that people can sit down, Black, Latino, white, Asian, no matter what ethnic group, and realize, spend time with these people. Sit down, have a hot dog, and be like, hey, I can laugh with this person. I can shake hands. I can play with their kids. There's no reason that we can't be just as friendly as I can be with the people that look just like me.
Right.
And that's kind of the stuff that I worked on when I was at graduate school at DU. I studied abroad in Israel, and I actually interned with a human rights organization called B'Tselem, which was run by Israelis, but it was working for Palestinian human rights. And my focus was basically like putting together these kinds of community affairs, these kinds of programs that would allow them to come together and see that they're really not that different.
Awesome. Well, Nikki, I think that's about wraps it up here. Cool. How can people get in contact with you? How can they follow the campaign? We'll have to have you on after Win or Lose and
I love that.
Chat again. But how can people find you?
So there's a ton of different ways. We're actually just about to be having our office space opening up. It's going to be at 3405 Downing.
Okay.
I think we're going to be moving in there this Thursday. I don't know. Gosh, what is today? The 11th? So that would be the 16th, I think? November 16th.
And what is that? People can come down there and actually come meet with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, people want to come meet with us. We're going to be running all of our volunteer stuff out of there, so we'll have a lot of people working there. We've got a pretty small staff right now, but we're building pretty quickly. So we'll be doing a lot of phone banking, launching canvases, all that kind of good stuff. And then, of course, as far as contacting me, I mean, I can give phone numbers and email addresses. People are more than welcome to call me on my personal cell number. It's 720-990-0232. The campaign number, if you don't want to talk to me, if you want to talk to someone else, the campaign number is 720-515-3249. My email is Nicky, N-I-C-K-Y. Yes, Nicky is a boy's name if it's not spelled with an I at the end. N-I-C-K-Y at N-I-C-K-Y, the number 4, HD5, the number 5.com. Nicky at Nicky4HD5.com. And then you can also email the campaign at the general info account, which is just info at Nicky4HD5.com. I think those should be all the contact details.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. Really appreciate you coming down.
Connor. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to go check us out. SoundCloud, whether you're listening here. Spreaker. I said Stitcher last time. We're not on Stitcher currently. Maybe we need to be. But Spreaker, SoundCloud, Instagram. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a follow, and give us some feedback. Love you all. Thanks for listening. Have an awesome day.